The principle I'm teaching there is, as an entrepreneur, learn every part of your business, but don't be afraid of hiring somebody who's way better than you at each one of those areas as you grow.
And tell me, because I mean, obviously running billion-dollar businesses is something that 99% of the world only ever get to read about. What would you say are, if any, the material differences that you've noticed in running something of that scale? Or is it just when you go from a million to 10 to 100, 100 to a billion, billion to 40 billion? Are there massive shifts in methods of operation, or is it just doing the same thing at scale but being more organized?
Yes, the key, you've got to have systems for everything so that you can duplicate it on a mass scale. So we created those systems when we were small to make sure that they would work perfectly when they're bigger. In fact, a lot of us as founders, John and I, we kind of did everything in the beginning. In fact, a funny story, right before I retired, I retired in 2017. Just to focus full time on charity work. But right before I retired, and now I'm still a founder, I'm still an owner, I'm the GP of the funds, etc. But I got way smarter people than me that are running the show. But right before I retired, we had actually 4,000 employees back then. We've scaled down the employees and outsourced some of the things since that time. But so at the time I retired, we had about 4,000 employees. We had 70 plus employees that were in accounting alone. One of them, his name was Andrew. He was new there and didn't know the history of the company. And he comes, and his job that day was to have the partner sign off on our expense reports. And so he comes in, and on my expense report, I've got trips to Dubai, and I've got front row seats at NBA games and nice restaurants with wealthy people. And he asked me, I'm signing off on it, and he said, Paul, he said, he didn't say Paul, he said, Mr. Hutchinson, he said, do you mind me asking, how did you get your job? And I realized he didn't know the history of the company. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you have the best job in the whole company. All you do is fly around and go to lunch with rich people. Because I was capital markets at the time. And so I decided to mess with him a little bit. And I said, well, Andrew, I used to do what you do. He goes, really? You were in accounting? I said, yeah, I had that, which I was, and when it was just me and John, right? And I said, yeah, I had a spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet that I was keeping track of the net asset valuations of all of the investors in the fund and all of this stuff. And it was like 70 megabyte spreadsheet. I said, and then Adam worked for our accounting, for our auditor. Now, Adam is now his boss, right? I said, so Adam came in and did all of our audits, and he said, Paul, he said, all of your numbers are right, but there's a hell of a lot easier ways of doing it than what you're doing. I said, so I got replaced by Adam. So basically I hired Adam to take my place. And then he said, I said, and then I did what Jonathan does. He goes, really, you were underwriting assets? Yeah, I have this huge stack of papers in which I was going through all of these assets and trying to figure out what the values were, etc. And every night I went home with a headache. And so I got replaced by Jonathan. And so I said, the only thing I was any good at was going to lunch with rich people. So that's where they put me. And so then he's like, well, holy crap. He says, so how many people were here when you started? I said, just me and John. So the principle I'm teaching there is, as an entrepreneur, learn every part of your business, but don't be afraid of hiring somebody who's way better than you at each one of those areas as you grow.
Perfect. Well, listen, I want to go on to talk about the work, the charity work, the child trafficking and your involvement in that. But just before we do, just want to kind of wrap up the entrepreneurial side with a question that someone's asked us in Facebook here, actually.
Sure.
Which says, I'll read it out. It says, you can only get a loan if you have equity. So what's your advice for me on my business? Because I have no equity, but my business venture is 6 years of knowledge. I've produced 9 journals, but I've written 52. What's your advice on how I can develop all 52? I mean, I guess the summary of the question is how do you go and find equity investors? How do you raise capital for a small business?
Absolutely. And here's the answer. There's different types of equity. There's physical value equity, which we did when we were doing the bridge loans and stuff. We have to say, okay, if you've got a property that's worth $5 million, I'll loan you $3 million on it. So I have a good loan to value type of a thing. But somebody like this gentleman, he's got equity in his assets, his knowledge, his experience, etc. So those type of lenders are not going to be your traditional lenders. They're not going to be the banks. They're going to be more private lenders, or guys who are willing to come in with some sort of an equity stake. So, if he's got some great ideas, if he's got a track record, that is equity. That is, there's value there. There's value in his experience. There's value in what he's created so far. And so somebody who understands that value, somebody who's maybe has some money that has been in the same industry as him, would be a great person to go to, who could say, hey, I believe in you. I'm going to lend you money on this, or I'll take a piece of your company as we're building it, etc. So yeah, those are less traditional, but there's equity there for somebody who understands the value of your company.
I'm loving this chat. I got to say, obviously you and I never got a chance to speak too much before we started, but there's so many similarities in our story, in our business. My core business is what you guys in America call hard money lending. So I spend my days having lunch with rich people to raise capital so that I can deploy it on secured debt in the UK. So many of your principles are either things that I operate or believe in, or try and operate and believe in myself. So I'm certainly getting some good value here, and I know the guys who get to watch and listen to this will be also.